Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome to my video for the Holiday Photo Card Blog Hop. There are 11 stops on the hop, which starts at LiveLoveCards.com, and each one shows you how to incorporate a photo into your holiday card. There'll be prizes from each one of these sponsors, which is so exciting. So to be entered for one of these prizes, just leave comments along the way. All right, so let me show you my card. It is a shutter card, and so when you open it, here it is partially open, the shutters reveal the photo inside. My finished card is 5x7 so that I could fit as big of a photo as possible. It looks sophisticated, but it's actually pretty easy to do. So here it is in action. Here's the front of the card, and then when I open it, you can see that the shutters open and then they close back up when I close the card. I am making 40 of these, and so what I'm doing is I'm cutting all of my pieces ahead of time. You can pause the video and look at my measurements here. My colors are Stampin' Up! Night of Navy, Simon Says Stamp Fog, and Nina Solar White. The first thing I'm going to do is take my navy pieces and score them. So this is my card base. It's 10x7, and I'm going to score it at 2.5, and then I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to score it at 2.5 again. For my shutter pieces, I am going to score them on the long side. So I'm going to put it in my scoreboard and score it at 1/2 of an inch. And then I'm going to put the other one in there and score it at 1/2 of an inch. Now I'm going to fold and crease these. And when you're folding scored cardstock, you want to fold it in the opposite direction from where you scored it. So they call it going over the hill, and that's where you get the best fold. All right, next I'm going to take my shutters. I'm going to unfold them a little bit here so I can measure. And I'm going to measure 1 7/8 of an inch from the side that has the score on it. And that's going to be the center of my triangle, if you will. And then I'm going to make sure that the center is in the center going vertically. And this is going to be 2 1/8 since it's 4 1/4 wide. So I'm going to mark that. And now I have my center point. I'm going to take my ruler and draw a line from that center point to each corner. And then I'll take a scissor and cut it by hand. You could do it in a trimmer if you want, but for me it was just as quick to cut it by hand. So what you're going to do is now you can use this as a template. So you just lay it on top of the other shutter piece and you cut it exactly the same way, and you can do that for all your pieces. So you just create one template and then you have it for the rest of the card you're making. Next I'm going to take my front Nina pieces and I'm going to measure them 2 inches from one side and 2 inches from the other side. I'm going bottom to top here. And then I'm going to cut it from this pencil line all the way to the top at a diagonal. I'm going to do this cut in a trimmer. Keep in mind that I'm doing this in assembly line format. I'm just showing you one card, but I'm going to be doing the same step for 40 cards, then moving on to the next step for 40 cards, and so on. The last piece that needs to be cut is my Nina center panel. I'm measuring 7/8 of an inch from the top. Now I know my measurements are very exact, but I want to not have to think when I'm going through this. So I just measure everything, and that way I know exactly what I have to do. So anyway, this measurement is actually for the top of the metal die. So you don't have to worry about figuring out where your cut line is going to be. Now that all the pieces are cut, the next step is to decorate them, and then we'll assemble it. My stamp set is from Mint Owl Studio. It's called Away in a Manger, and I love it because it's cute, but it's not cutesy, so it is just perfect. I'm going to start with my sentiments. I have the long piece and the short piece. I'm going to use the long piece first. I'm using the MISTI, which is going to definitely come in handy for all these repeating steps. I'll ink it up with some Versamark ink, and then I'll stamp it down, and this is the point at which I'm going to do all of them. So take this off, put the next one on, stamp it, ink it, stamp it, put the next one on, ink it, stamp it, and so on. For the second one, this is the shorter one, and I'm going to do the same thing, ink it up with some Versamark ink and stamp it. And again, keep repeating again and again and again, all the ones that you're going to do. And then Versamark ink takes a pretty long time to dry, so you have plenty of time to sprinkle it with some white embossing powder and heat them to set them. The sentiment that's going on the front of the card, I'm going to split it in half. So I'm going to put it in my trimmer and just go right up the middle, and you should get 2 pieces that are the same height. You could cut your stamp before stamping it, but I don't really like to cut my stamp, so I just split it after I stamped it. The other sentiment is going in the middle on my Nina piece with a circle, so I'm just going to adhere that with an ATG tape runner right there at the bottom. My front pieces are pretty small, so I'm going to use a Zig 2A glue pen, and I'm going to put them on the card a little off center. So I want it to be sort of toward the middle of the card. So I'm going to line up the edge on the left and then press it down, and then I'll cut off the excess. That way my sentiment sort of connects one side to the other by putting them both toward the center. I want the sentiments to be the same distance from the center, so I'm just going to hold this up against the first one and cut it the same distance, and then I'll use my two-way glue pen and put it onto the card the same distance up as the other one. So I'm going to line them up together so that I can make sure they sort of meet in the middle when my card is closed. And then I'll just trim off the excess on the other side. To speed up the process, I'm going to stamp Mary and Joseph at the same time in my MISTI. I'm just going to put both of the pieces on either corner, and then I'll ink it up with some Memento Tuxedo black ink because I'm going to be using Copic markers on these, and then I'll stamp them down. And I'm just going to keep repeating this process while my stamps are in the MISTI, and I'll just put the next set in, stamp it, put the next set in, stamp it, and so on. I'm also going to stamp the manger and the baby Jesus here. I had to move to my bigger MISTI because it didn't fit in my small one. So same thing, inking it up with some Memento Tuxedo black ink and stamping it down. I'm just going to stamp them all at the same time. Next, I'm going to color all these images. So I'm going to try to be consistent in the colors that I use on each one. For Mary, I'm using a W1 in the shadow areas and then blending that out with my zero colorless blender so it looks like her dress is white. Then I'm going to remove the zero and I'm going to add a W3, and these are going to be the colors of Joseph's coat. So just along the edge, I'm going to put the W3, then I'll blend that edge with the W1 and then fill that in all the way to the center. For their faces, I used E30, but I found that it was a little bit too like orangey. So I took my zero colorless blender and I went over the whole thing to just sort of fade it a little bit. And I did the same thing on Mary. Next, I'm going to work on their headpieces, and I'm going to keep the same color. So I have B24 and B21 for Mary, and I'm going to use B24 for Joseph. I'm just coloring the inside with the dark color and the outside with the lighter color. And then just the top of his hat will be the B24. For his beard and staff, I'm just coloring this in solid E57. I'm not going to do any shading. And then there's a little band on each one. I'm going to do that in the Y11. Okay, so Mary and Joseph are in a barn. They're not going to have grass underneath them. So I'm just dotting some E99. This is going to be hay or straw. And then I filled in some dots, and these are just random. Don't make it into a pattern, with the YR24, and then filled the rest in with the Y21. And I'm going to use those same colors on the inside at the top here. I'm going to do the bottom in E99, then I'll move up a little bit with the YR24, and then fill the rest in with the Y21. Now I added one extra step here. I took my YR24, that middle color, and I just added some dots, and this is just to show the texture of the straw. So you could skip this step if you want to, and I may do that after I've done several of these. And then I went back in with the Y21 just to blend over those dots. Same colors for inside the manger. The part that's closest to the baby is going to be the darkest, and I'm going to move out slowly with the medium and then finish off with the Y21. And now I'm going to move to the posts really quickly, just the W3 and W1, the same from the outfits of Mary and Joseph to keep my colors consistent. And the manger is going to be just two colors, just trying to keep it simple here, E57, and then I went in with an E55 to lighten up with the highlight. And then again, keeping with the consistency of the outside of the card, I'm going to do that same straw kind of floor technique as I did in the front. This is a jelly roll pen made by Sakura. It's called Clear Star. And the best way I can describe this is to say it's like stardust. It is just beautiful and delicate and shimmery. I forgot to do the baby Jesus face, so I'm going to fill that in. And that'll be the end of my coloring. So now I'm going to start assembling the card. I'm using fog cardstock on the inside flaps because it is a very neutral, very subtle color, and if I put white it would be too stark. I want that centerpiece with the baby Jesus in the photo to really stand out, and so this will sort of make these pieces fall into the background a little bit, but it'll be a color that I can write on, so that's where my message is going to be. It's time to create the shutter, and what I'm going to do is measure 2 5/8 down from the top of the card. This measurement is based on where I cut my circle, and it is in the center of the circle. Now I'm going to take a T-square. If you don't have a T-square, I recommend you get one because it's really great for adding guidelines. And I'm going to mark my pencil line horizontally across on that mark that I just made from the top. I'm going to take my shutter pieces, and the part that's folded down, I'm going to put some tape on the outside of that. So I'm just going to use my normal ATG tape runner, and put a line straight down there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the center of this angle with the horizontal line that I drew. And then I'm also going to line up this side over here so that the part that has the tape on it is straight up against the crease of the card. And then I'll fold the flap in, press it down, and then you'll see that that's how my shutter is going to work right there. So when I do the other side, same thing, put some tape runner on the part that's folded down on the outside, and it's all flat at this point. And then I'm going to line it up on the pencil line, and I'm also going to check the top and the bottom of the other piece to make sure that they're both equal. Put it up against the crease of the card on the right hand side. Once I get all these things lined up, then I can fold this down and it will stick. And then when I open it up, you'll see now I have the two pieces right up against that pencil line. And you can see this from the top here. I cut my photo to about 4 inches by 4 inches. I'm just going to center it here, and your photo might be a little bit different. I just marked the corner so I know where I positioned it. And then I'm just going to take my tape runner, put some tape on the back, and then I'm going to put it right up against that corner that I drew to put it back into the same spot. You just want to make sure that your photo doesn't go above or below the shutter so it doesn't show when you put the shutters down. I'm going to pop up my circle panel over the shutters. I have 1/2 inch Scotch foam tape, so I'm going to cut it in half so it's a little thinner. You just want to make sure that it's not thicker than this top piece up here because you don't want it to touch the shutter. It'll stick to the shutter and it won't move. So, and I also had to make sure that the Scotch foam tape was below the bottom of the shutter. So you're going to kind of overlap the points of the shutter, and then you're going to place this right on top. So see what I mean? You just have to make sure your Scotch foam tape is not near the blue shutter pieces or they won't slide back and forth. And so I'm just testing this out to make sure it's working. It's looking pretty good. So I'm going to move on to the front of the card. I'm just going to take my pieces, put some ATG tape runner on them, and adhere them to the front of the card. I'm just putting a piece of scratch paper underneath so I can see the edge of my card easily. I decided to add a star to the sky, so I have some American Crafts glitter paper, and I'm going to use my Wish Big star. You can use any star die or star punch or whatever. And so I cut that out and I put some Tombow Mono Multi glue on the back and stick it up there in the corner. And then I'm going to take that Jelly Roll pen and I'm going to just dot the different points of the star, the inside and the outside points, just to make it sparkle and stand out a little bit more. And that finishes up the card. So I know it's probably a little time consuming for making 40 of them, but I thought if someone could sit here and open and close my card and just think about Jesus, who is the reason for the season, then it would be worth it. I hope you'll visit all the stops on the hop and leave your comments so that you can possibly win a prize. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.